Spine-chilling footage of hidden creatures exposed, 7 unexplained beings that haunt experts. Lisa's phone buzzed violently against the kitchen counter, its glow slicing through the dim light of the early evening. Disbelief twisted in her gut as she read the message, grainy footage of dark shapes said to haunt their neighborhood. Instinctively, she felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Was this some sort of joke? She considered dismissing it, but then, memories of late-night sounds outside loomed large. Were those footsteps or just her imagination? "Mom, can we go already? I need snacks." Riley whined, a tinge of fear painted on her young face. Max, clinging to a video game gadget, squinted at the screen like it held secrets. "Yeah, it's just a story, right?" he added, though Lisa saw the unease behind his bravado. They weren't ready for what awaited them outside their once comforting suburban streets now tainted with tension. As Lisa pulled out onto their tree-lined road, the lingering sunset cast long shadows that danced ominously, creeping just beyond the edges of their fragmented reality. There were familiar sights, the neighbors' houses with their cheerful porch lights, but she felt a dissonance now. It was as if these quiet facades were mere disguises. While waiting at a red light, her thoughts spiraled. Those creatures mentioned in the message, what if they were lurking just beyond her window? She shook her head slightly, trying to dismiss irrational fears, but a strange noise suddenly filled the air, a low guttural growl, not quite from any animal she recognized. "Did you hear that?" she asked, jerking her head toward the sound. Riley's eyes were wide. "Mom, it's probably just a raccoon," she muttered, but already, dread fermented within Lisa. They reached the convenience store, lights hanging like desperate stars in the night sky. The door creaked ominously as they entered, an unwelcome echo in the small shop. Behind her, flickering overhead lights cast erratic shadows, twisting her perception of safety. As they grabbed snacks, Lisa noticed odd symbols etched into the shelves, strange, cryptic markings that had never been there before. Every aisle felt like a maze, where caution blended with confusion. "Is it just me, or do all these symbols look creepy?" Max whispered, clutching his phone tightly. "Nothing to worry about, kids," she reassured, her voice wavering slightly. "Just some art or something." Yet as she spoke, she felt their worried eyes probing her, and that gnawing fear clawed deeper. Later, as they drove home, her phone buzzed again. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Her skin prickled. A tall shadow moved just outside the window, catching her peripheral vision. She whipped her head, but all that greeted her was the lingering darkness of their familiar neighborhood. The unease crept in again. What if those whispers from the screen weren't just stories? What if they were the thread pulling her into a nightmare? But it spiraled further when she stumbled on that shaky cell phone footage. The glowing shapes lurked just beyond the visibility of their community, indistinct but undeniably real, flickering against the night sky. Anxiety coursed through her as she watched, unable to rouse her voice to scream yet again at the encroaching horrors believed only to be urban legends, and just as shadows loomed closer to her home, a realization dawned: this wasn't just folklore. The creatures weren't bound by mere tales. They were part of her landscape, part of her neighbors' solutions, smiles veiling something sinister. What if the darkest creatures weren't in the woods, but right next door? As Lisa turned the key in the front door, her heart raced. She stepped inside, the warm glow of the living room almost mocking her increasing sense of dread. The kids followed, chatter ceasing as they noticed the atmosphere in the house felt strangely heavy. Last night's comfort now felt like a distant memory, overwritten by an unsettling edge. "Mom, can we just have a movie night?" Riley's voice broke through the silence, yet there was no joy in it. The thought of anything that could distract from the reality outside felt like a reprieve. Still, Lisa hesitated, glancing toward the window. Dark shapes flickered in the shadows like ghosts, haunting specters of the past creeping into her present. "Sure, honey. Just let me get some blankets." She forced a smile, but inside, panic clawed at her insides. The evening stretched unnaturally, stretching the silence like it was about to snap. With blankets draped over the couch, they huddled close, eyes glued to the flickering screen. But all she could focus on was the distant rustling sounds outside. Every move made her jump as if the world outside was conspiring against their tranquility. An hour passed. Anxiety tugged at Lisa like the dark forces she feared. What shadows were inching closer? She paused the movie, standing abruptly. "I'm going to check the back door and make sure it's locked." "Really? You can just do that later." Max countered, but his eyes betrayed his fear. "Just a moment," Lisa said firmly, her voice cold and cutting. The air felt thicker as she made her way to the kitchen. She moved quietly, her footsteps muted against the tiled floor. As she reached the door, a barely audible whisper brushed against her ears, words she couldn't quite comprehend, but the intent behind them paralyzed her. Heart pounding, she grasped the doorknob tightly. It felt icy, sending a surge of fear coursing through her. She took a deep breath. Then she yanked the door open. Nothing. The backyard glinted beneath the moonlight, tranquil and eerily still, but it felt wrong. The familiar lawn seemed to breathe around her, stirring with unseen life. Was that a shadow? Or just her imagination? Just as she leaned out to peer into the depths of darkness, a low growl echoed, a sound deeper than any animal, reverberating through her bones. The hair on her arms stood tall. "Mom?" Riley's voice reached her, quivering with worry. "Everything's fine," she shouted back, though her voice wavered. She looked again, narrowing her eyes. That's when a figure darted too fast, too fluid to be human. It slipped from the edge of the trees, just beyond the light. "Mom? What is it?" Max yelled, the panic rising in his voice. Instinctively, Lisa slammed the door shut, locking it, heart racing, mind racing faster. I think we're not alone," she whispered, her throat tightening. "Not alone?" Riley echoed, fear etched all over her small face. She turned to them, her mind racing as she tried to piece together the fragments of terror. What were those things outside? They were no longer mere shadows, something was out there. Something that knew they were inside. Just then, the house creaked, a sound that wasn't quite wood shifting but something heavier, something deliberate. A chill skittered across her spine. The lights flickered above, plunging them into darkness for an instant before the glow returned. Panic ensued. "Let's move to the living room," Max shouted, grabbing his sister's hand. But then there were footsteps, distinct, heavy. They were coming from inside the house. "Stay here," Lisa mouthed as she backed toward the living room. But the urge to protect her children clawed at her gut. Then, a cold voice permeated the air, just a breath away. "We know you're here and we're coming for you." Lisa's breath hitched, her world spiraling into chaos. What had opened up now? What lay beyond the fragile safety of these four walls? And as she turned to face her children, a thought gripped her tightly. This was only the beginning. What if they had welcomed the darkness in? What if the latest footage of shadows wasn't merely a warning, but an invitation? Panic gripped Lisa as she listened to the heavy footfalls echoing through the halls. Each step felt like a countdown, a steady drumbeat to the inevitable. She glanced at the kids, their eyes wide with fear, but a strange determination surged within her to protect them. Yet, deep inside, dread twisted her stomach. How could she fight something that thrived on fear? She motioned for them to stay quiet, pressing herself against the wall as she moved toward the living room. The old floorboards creaked under her weight, betraying her with every careful step. "Mom," Riley whispered, her voice barely audible. "Shh," Lisa hissed, her heart racing. She strained to listen, the world around her muted, suffocating. The footsteps paused. Silence enveloped the house, heavy and thick. Then came a soft rustle like breathing, close and heavy. Lisa's instincts screamed at her to run, to bolt toward the front door, but her children's safety tied her feet to the ground. "Stay close," she murmured, inching toward the living room where they could barricade themselves. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and a chill swept through the room as they plunged into darkness, leaving only the faint light filtering through the window. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and elongating like specters coming to life. "Max!" Lisa whispered urgently, nudging him. "Find something to block the door." He nodded, eyes darting nervously. The pulse of impending dread thrummed in unison with her heartbeat, and she could feel it pressing down on her, the weight of something dark and unseen. A scratching sound clawed at the door. "Mom, what is happening?" Max stammered, searching her face for answers she didn't have. I don't know." Her voice trembled, despair leaking into her building anxiety. Then, the scratching turned into a full-fledged pounding, determined, relentless. With a sudden crash, the living room door slammed open, splintering the frame. Lisa spun around, adrenaline surging through her. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, backlit by eerie moonlight. It was unnaturally tall, its limbs bending in grotesque angles as it swayed like a tree in a storm. Shadows pooled around its feet, tidal waves of darkness absorbed by the walls. "What do you want?" Lisa shouted, trying to infuse courage into her voice, but it broke like glass. The figure leaned forward, an unnatural grin stretching across its face, revealing teeth that didn't quite belong to this world. It stepped forward, and Lisa could see that it wasn't just a shadow but something much darker, its skin glistening like oil under the dismal light. "Mom!" Riley screamed, and the creature's grin widened, as if enjoying their terror. "Run!" Lisa snarled, grabbing her children's hands, dragging them toward the far corner of the room as the creature's rattling laugh filled the air. They squeezed into a narrow crevice between the wall and an old bookcase, hearts pounding in unison. Lisa pressed herself against them, praying the darkness would hide them. The laughter faded, but the oppressive weight of its presence lingered, thickening the air around them. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up like a beacon in the night. Without thinking, she pulled it from her pocket. But the screen displayed a live video feed. Static and distortion clawed at the image, flickering in and out, until it finally stabilized. The video showed the front of their house and a patch of darkness pulsed just beyond the front porch, a shifting mass that throbbed to an unheard rhythm. "What is that?" Max stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Lisa breathed, feeling the dread clawing its way back. Then, the realization hit her. What if it's waiting for us to come out? She wondered out loud, her mind racing. If they were trapped inside, what atrocities would the night hold for them? And before she could settle that fear, the figure at the door moved, gliding just out of sight, searching for another way in. "Mom? What do we do?" Riley whimpered, clinging tightly to her. Lisa clenched her jaw. They had to face the creature. They had to confront the nightmare. With each passing moment, the walls seemed to close in, pressing her choices down like a vice. As the house trembled under the weight of something unspeakable, she whispered, "We have to fight it or we won't survive." But little did she know, there was more to this darkness, more than just shadows lurking outside waiting to be invited in. What awaited them beyond their fragile sanctuary? A deafening silence filled the cramped space as they huddled in the crevice, the weight of the world pressing down around them. Lisa's heart raced, thundering in her ears like a warning. Every passing second stretched into an eternity, the uncertainty gnawing at her. She could feel the children trembling beside her, their innocent breaths quick and shallow. "Mom?" Riley's quivering voice broke through the fear-laden silence. What if it finds us? Lisa forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It won't. Just stay quiet. But even as she spoke, doubts flickered in her mind. What if silence wasn't enough? The creature's presence was like a storm cloud, dark and ever-looming. She could almost feel it probing the walls of their sanctuary, searching, testing the seams of their hiding spot. In that moment, the house groaned. A low rumble shook the floor beneath them, and the shadows grew deeper, almost alive. A chill entered the crevice, forming icy tendrils that wrapped around their skin. Lisa squeezed her children's hands tighter, feeling their warmth against the cold encroaching darkness. Suddenly, a far-off, metallic creaking sound echoed through the house, piercing the thick silence. The creature was moving closer. The sound grew louder. It was as if something heavy was being dragged across the floor, inching toward them with a deliberate, predatory pace. "Mom, what if it comes in here?" Max's voice cracked, fear escaping his lips like a whisper lost in the wind. She couldn't answer. Instead, she strained to listen, each creak and crack in the house becoming a palpable entity, a heartbeat drumming with dread. Their home, once a sanctuary, felt like a tomb, a place where secrets lingered in the shadows, waiting to be unleashed. Then, from the corner of her eye, she caught a glimmer on her phone screen, the video feed still displaying the unsettling dark mass outside the front porch. A slow-motion flicker lit up a nightmarish shape that seemed to pulse and swell with the beat of something unseen. "What is it doing?" Riley murmured, peering past her mother's shoulder to catch a glimpse of the screen. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as the mass morphed. Tendrils reached outward, stretching in grotesque ways, like a sinister flower blooming in the night. Each tentacle pulled and unfurled until the darkness seemed ready to break free. And then, as if it heard her thoughts, the figure from the door returned, trailing its limbs in a sinister dance toward the wall where they hid. It stopped, the unnatural grin now obscuring its face, eyes piercing through the blackness where the light dared not reach. "Now," Lisa whispered, her voice a mixture of fear and fierce resolve. "We need to make a sound." "What?" Max gasped, his eyes wide with confusion and terror. "We have to lure it away. I don't know how else we can survive this night," she said, her heart pounding with every word, urgency sweeping over her like a wave. "Are you sure?" Riley asked, her voice trembling. "Trust me." Lisa stood slowly, holding her breath as she took a step back, ready to shout, to call out to the abyss. Just then, the doors of the hall creaked open, echoing eerily through their refuge. The creature paused, tilting its head as if sensing her resolve. It seemed to hone in on her, a predator sniffing the air, hunting. "Hey! Over here!" Lisa yelled, her voice cutting through the murky stillness. The figure turned, that ghastly grin splitting its face wider. The echoes of its laughter floated through the air, sharper than the edge of a knife, sending chills down her spine. "Run!" she yelled, her instincts screaming to flee. But as they rushed from their hiding spot into the flicker of moonlight, something shifted outside. The mass began solidifying into a more defined shape, revealing features that twisted and contorted under the light. A series of urgent raps at the window made Lisa freeze. Raps that mimicked the very creature that pursued them. She directed her gaze back at the door, feeling her heart seize. What if the other side of the door held more terror, more than just the figure before them? "Mom!" Max cried, pulling at her arm. More noises surrounded them, layered in crescendo. Faint whispers seeped through, pressing at the edge of her sanity. "Stay close," she whispered as they backed toward the door. But as she did, a sense of foreboding engulfed her. Just then, a voice emerged from the shadows, low and distorted, weaving through the tension. "Let us in," and the world outside shifted again, growing darker, a nightmare pooling before them, waiting. What truth lay hidden there, and how long could they survive before the darkness consumed them all? The darkness pressed against them, thick and suffocating. Lisa risked a glance toward the window, seeing nothing but an inky void that swallowed all light. The rapping intensified, louder, sharper, almost desperate, merging with the distant echoes of the creature's laughter that danced in her mind like a haunting melody. "Mom!" Max's voice trembled through the chaos. "What do we do?" The urgency in his question shot through her like ice. She didn't have an answer. They were trapped, suspended in time and dread. The door behind them felt like a false promise, but the whispers creeping through the walls felt far more sinister. Slowly, she leaned closer to Max and Riley. "We have to stick together. Remember what I said, no matter what, don't let go of my hand." "Okay," Riley whispered, her grip tightening. With a pulse of resolve, Lisa turned back to the door. "We're going to." The door groaned again as if a weight crashed against it. Something heavy scraped the floor just beyond, a slow and deliberate sound that stirred the hairs on the back of her neck. "Mom, please." Max whimpered. His voice caught in his throat, and she could almost see the numb panic in his eyes. "We have to move." Lisa snapped, the edge of her voice sharpening as fear clawed at her insides. She was losing her grip, losing control. Suddenly, the front door shattered inward with a thunderous crash, sending splinters shuddering into the room. The creature lunged into their sanctuary, limbs flailing in unnatural angles, eyes gleaming like obsidian stones. "Run!" Lisa shouted, instantly regretting the command. The confusion in her children's faces was clear as they hesitated, weighed down by shock. The figure twisted, its gaze locking onto them with a horrific intensity that set her heart racing anew. A cold sweat broke out on the nape of her neck. "Mom!" Riley cried, but before she could react, the creature lunged toward them. Instinct kicked in. "Go! Out the back!" Lisa screamed and propelled them toward the small, dimly lit hallway leading to the kitchen. They dashed, the dark figure behind them morphing, shifting, as it pressed deeper into the house, chasing after the warmth of their desperate escape. Lisa darted into the kitchen, heart thumping against her ribcage. The room felt sterile, foreign. An off-putting silence enveloped them, amplified by their ragged breath. She paused to look back, seeing the doorway ripple like water as the darkness coalesced into the creature's form, spreading like a massive shadow. "Out the back door!" she urged, pushing Riley and Max ahead of her. They skidded to a halt in front of the rear entrance. The door gaped open, revealing the night outside, an unwelcoming abyss. The air outside held an oppressive stillness, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting. Time slipped through her fingers as the creature's laughter echoed louder in her ears, warping reality. "Go!" Suddenly, the heavy box of her doubts fell open in her mind. What if it's waiting? No time to think. Max screamed, dragging her back to focus. As they passed the threshold, into the night, they were met with an onslaught of sound: rustling leaves, whispering winds, and the sharp exhale of something that wasn't just wind. "Mom, look!" Riley pointed, her finger quivering. Ahead of them, across the overgrown yard, a thrumming chaos was unfolding, caught in the moonlight. Shapes emerged from the shadows, disfigured forms crawling from the bushes, their eyes glowing like dying embers. Then, from behind, the creature surged through the door frame, twisting and contorting, its size growing enormously. "Move!" Lisa yelled again, racing toward the far side of the yard, but something tugged at her fears, an icy realization sinking deep. They weren't just running from one creature. They were crossing into a realm swarming with terrors, a night filled with the hungry echoes of the night, and every shadow seemed to pulse with the promise of more terror to come. What did we unleash? She thought, panic striking in her chest. The horizon shimmered darkly, and as they stumbled forward, a chorus of sinister whispers enveloped them, echoing their doubts. "Join us." The truth gnawed at her soul, relentless. What awaited them in the dark? They hadn't seen the last of the horror yet. The real nightmare was just beginning. The yard stretched before them like a dark sea, the trees reaching out as if to pull them back, to swallow them whole. Lisa felt her heart racing, pounding in her ears as the chaos erupted around them. Nightmarish silhouettes screeched and howled, phantoms of the dark emerging, their contorted forms writhing in the shadowy corners. "Run!" she urged, her breath a frantic whisper as she jerked her kids forward. Max clung to her hand tightly, fear radiating from him, while Riley struggled to comprehend the whirlwind of terror unfolding. The air thickened, swirling with an unnameable dread, as they sprinted down the path. But Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, prey in a twisted game. The creatures danced behind them, a horde of desperate shadows snapping at their heels. "Where do we go?" Max gasped, sweat beading on his brow. "Anywhere but here," Lisa barked, pushing them onward. She scanned the yard, spotted the fence at the end, a possible escape. But the fence loomed like a cruel gate to a prison. What awaited them on the other side? Relentless nightmares zigzagged through her mind, each option a different horror. Her thoughts churned, weighing down her every move. A sudden shriek erupted behind them, loud enough to split her resolve. "Hurry!" she shouted, her voice trembling. They reached the worn wooden fence just as a dark form lunged from the underbrush. Lisa barely had time to react before it knocked her to the ground, sending cold dirt and grass flying. She hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her shoulder. "Mom!" Max's scream shattered her focus. She twisted around, struggling to her feet, only to find Riley frozen, eyes wide, staring into the nightmarish figure that towered over them. The creature was grotesque, its limbs long and twisted, skin glistening under the moonlight like oiled iron. It opened its mouth wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth, gums dripping with something that looked disturbingly like blood. "Run!" Lisa screamed again, but her throat grew raw, the words clawing at her. That command always on the tip of her tongue felt almost futile now. Before she could react, Max grabbed Riley's hand, yanking her away from the looming terror. The two turned, instinctively darting around the fence, pushing forward into the darkness. Lisa's breath quickened and she followed close behind, pain shooting through her shoulder with every step, but the horde was upon them. More shapes slithered out from the foliage, each more horrifying than the last. Faces masks of terror grinned and shrieked, their voices merging into a cacophony of dread. They stumbled towards the trees lining their backyard, the monstrous things pursuing them like dogs on a hunt. Swallowing her fears, Lisa ducked under branches while the whispers intertwined with her frantic thoughts. Join us behind them." The creature's laughter rose and fell like choppy waves, taunting. "Join us," it echoed, and Lisa couldn't help but feel its sinister pull, a dark desire wrapping around her mind. "Mom!" Riley's voice broke through the haze. "What's that?" Lisa's heart plummeted. Ahead, a shadow shifted in the trees, larger than the rest, darker than the night. The air seemed to thrum with an energy, a promise of dread. "Keep moving," she urged, knowing the unseen terror loomed, ever-watchful. As they darted deeper into the woods, each branch that cracked underfoot felt like a hammer striking the fragile barrier of safety. Time seemed to stretch, reality blurring between dream and waking horror. Then came a chilling silence. Suddenly, the sounds of pursuit vanished. Lisa halted, her breath escaping in ragged gasps. She turned to Max and Riley, eyes wide with dread. "Where are they?" Just then, a voice whispered through the trees, soft and beckoning. "Join us." The darkness unfurled ahead, and something deep in her gut twisted in response. "Mom, we can't stay here," Max pleaded, fear infusing his voice. As she scanned the dark shadows, doubt clawed at her. Were they truly free? Or merely standing at the precipice of something far worse? With a shaky breath, Lisa knew they had to keep moving. But as they ventured further into the blackened woods, the whispers grew louder, echoing around them. Something was guiding them deeper, into the heart of horror, toward the unknown. What would they uncover there? Would it lead them closer to the answers they desperately sought, or deeper into despair? They pressed on, reluctance gripping Lisa's chest like a vice. The whispering, insidious and mocking, wrapped around them like a noose. She glanced back, feeling the weight of the darkness pooling just beyond her vision. What were they up against? Each shadow felt alive, pulsating with a kind of malicious glee. "Mom." Max's voice trembled, his grip on Riley tightening. "What if they find us again?" "They won T," she lied, forcing confidence into her tone, even as fear gnawed at her insides. The oppressive silence, punctuated only by their ragged breathing, was worse than the sounds of pursuit. Here in the woods, they were adrift, cut off from everything they knew. Then came a rustle from the thicket. Lisa froze, heart hammering. They all turned, eyes wide, every nerve ending alight. It was only the wind at least, that's what she hoped. But hope felt frail, like a candle flickering on the brink of extinguishment. "Keep moving," she hissed, shoving them forward again, deeper into the treachery of the trees. Branches scraped at them as they ran. The darkness thickened, swallowing any semblance of safety. Lisa could no longer discern the path, it twisted and turned like a sinister riddle. Her focus narrowed, frantically suppressing the thoughts bubbling up of what lurked just out of sight. "Look!" Riley pointed, breathless, ahead of them. Some kind of light flickered, a ghostly luminescence pulsing like a heartbeat. Instinct warned her, the hairs on the back of her neck stood in warning. All reason screamed at her to turn back. But the children were drawn, spellbound by the glow. "Stay close," Lisa urged, pushing fear aside. Curiosity wrestled with dread, an invisible thread binding them to that light. They squeezed through the branches, weaving around gnarled roots that seemed to reach for their ankles. The light drew them in, brighter than before now that they were near an eerie greenish flicker emanating from a clearing. Time and sanity seemed suspended as they entered, suspended in a space that did not feel entirely real. The clearing was surrounded by towering trees, thick and ancient. At the center, a haunting figure stood silhouetted against the pulsing light. It was encased in a shimmering shroud of fog, its features indistinct yet outlined by an ominous aura. Almost direct in its gaze, it felt both inviting and repulsive. "Who are you?" Riley whispered, the innocence of her question haunting the air. Lisa's heart raced. This was a creature as otherworldly as the darkness itself, but still it felt familiar, a face she could almost recognize. It stretched a long, thin finger toward them, beckoning them forward with a grace that twisted her gut. "Mom, I feel like I know it," Max's voice wavered. "No," Lisa snapped, fear blazing in her eyes. "It's not safe." But the bond of that voice pulled at them, tendrils of longing weaving through her thoughts. The light pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, like hope disguised as a nightmare. "Join us," it whispered again, melodic, enchanting, offering something. She could feel it. Suddenly, Lisa realized that the woods had gone silent again, but not from absence of sound. The shadows encroached, blotting out everything that felt safe. The warmth of the glow fought against the cold of her dread, but it did nothing to quell the rising tide of terror in her chest. "We have to go," she said, urgency radiating from her voice. "Now." The three of them stumbled back, but the pulse of the green light throbbed, tugging them closer. Max and Riley hesitated, their eyes filled with an unsettling mix of fear and intrigue. "Please, let us just leave," Lisa cried out, but doubt lingered in the air between them. As she yanked her kids back, a dark laugh echoed through the clearing, reverberating off the trees. Whatever this light was, it wasn't just a beacon. It was a lure, promising sweet oblivion. Just then, shadows flared to life behind the figure, twisting and writhing into monstrous shapes. Lisa's heart sank. "Run!" The chase ignited again, a frenzied stampede towards uncertainty. They dashed away from the light, but every perpendicular call of "join us" echoed behind them, tinged with desperation. What was the price of escape? Shadows flanked them, their silhouettes reaching out like claws. They were closed in, and the oppressive darkness offered no way out. Then, just as they thought they might burst through, silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't just the absence of noise. An overwhelming sense of anticipation filled the air, a thick fog crawling back towards them, heavier than before. What waited in the shadows? Something twisted, something that wouldn't let them go so easily. Behind them, a claw-like hand burst forth from the underbrush, grasping for Max's leg. Lisa screamed, panic feeding her limbs, as the chase shifted into a terrifying crescendo, and their escape transformed into fight or flight. What price would they pay for survival now? Would they even make it out alive? Max's scream pierced through Lisa's panic, as the claw-like hand lunged closer, its gnarled fingers brushing his ankle. She yanked him free, adrenaline surging, propelling them all forward. But the shadows were relentless, giving chase, pulsating with a hunger that clawed at their heels. "Keep running!" Lisa shouted, her throat dry and raw. With each hurried step, the limbs of the trees seemed to interlace tighter above them, blocking out whatever fragile light remained. The forest morphed into a labyrinth of darkness, disorienting. Lisa could barely keep her bearings. The sinister whispers swelled again, taunting them from the depths of the night. "We can't go back." Max gasped, panting hard. "What if it follows us?" "It will if we don't move." Riley cried, her voice crackling. They zigzagged through the trees, breathless, fear clawing at their guts. Max still glanced back, eyes wide with dread, while Lisa clenched her teeth, straining against the weight of her own terror. The memories of the spectral figure flickered in her mind, its glowing allure and the caress of that whisper tugging at her thoughts. What was it trying to offer them? She knew that whatever it was, it would not come without a cost. A guttural growl erupted from nearby, sending icy chills racing down Lisa's spine. The shadows thickened, slithering around their feet. "This way!" she yelled, veering left down a narrow path she barely recognized. Dark shapes converged, twisting around the trees, each one angling toward them like slithering serpents hungry for prey. The night air grew denser, making it hard to breathe. Lisa's legs screamed in protest, but she pushed through, driven by the desperate need to protect her children. "Mom!" Max shouted, panic spilling over. "What if we're trapped?" As if in answer, a low, harmonious chant echoed through the woods, an eerie melody that sang of entrapment. "Join us" floated from the darkness, close now, and a fervent urge surged in Lisa's chest. "No!" she roared back, shaking off the influence that threatened to sweep her into despair. They couldn't stop, not now, but the harmony grew louder as they ran, weaving through the trees, the air thick with the aroma of damp earth and decay. It wasn't just a physical chase, it felt like a war of wills between the whispers and Lisa's frantic determination. Suddenly, her foot snagged on a root, and she stumbled forward, landing heavily on the ground. Max and Riley skidded to a halt and turned, their eyes wide with fear as shadows twisted into grotesque positions, elongating toward them. Lisa scrambled up, brushing dirt from her knees, ignoring the pain. "Go!" she yelled, her voice a desperate command. They darted past her, but just as Lisa was about to follow, a pale hand shot out from the shadows, seizing her wrist. Cold, clammy fingers clasped around her, squeezing tight. She felt their grip tightening as if absorbing her very essence. "Mom!" Max cried, eyes bulging, terror-stricken, but there wasn't time to think. With a surge of adrenaline, Lisa jerked her arm free. She didn't look back. She plunged forward, following the fading shimmers of light ahead, but the sinister whispers clawed at her mind, flaring into a maddening crescendo. "Join us" resonated in her thoughts, hypnotic and relentless. As she pushed through the underbrush, each step felt like a battle against an invisible mass tugging her back. In the distance, another sound erupted, a teetering laugh, chilling, echoing through the canopy, hauntingly familiar. It sent a shiver down her spine. Then she felt the ground beneath her quake, the very pulse of the forest shifting again as if awakening from slumber. "Mom! Look!" Riley pointed ahead, terror mixed with shock. A figure lingered in the distance, not entirely shadow, not entirely light. It bore resemblance to something human but twisted, features distorted, eyes glowing with unnatural flickers. The figure clasped something in its hands, radiating that eerie green pulse, a beacon in the darkness that beckoned them closer. Lisa's heart raced, torn between instinct and curiosity. We can't. We need to get out of here. But the children dared to step forward, their fascination laced with fear igniting a horror she couldn't comprehend. We have to know. Riley pleaded, entranced by its powerful allure. Stay back. Lisa cried, just as she lunged toward them, ready to pull them away. A blinding light erupted before her, illuminating the clearing and casting monstrous shapes against the trees. Shadows writhed, and the winds howled. Lisa's breath hitched, her resolve finally cracking. Were they truly trapped, or was there a way out? The laughter escalated, the figure stepping deeper into the light, revealing a twisted smile that twisted Lisa's stomach. Was it too late? As the laughter crescendoed into a frenzy, the forest held its breath, and everything paused. The children froze, the light danced eerily, rippling dangerously. What would happen next? Would they embrace the light, or wrestle against the nightmare? Hope twisted into dread, and in that moment, all paths felt perilous. The forest shuddered, every whisper echoing in the chilling silence that followed the figure's appearance. Lisa fought against the magnetic force drawing her children closer. She felt the thrum of danger pulsating in her veins, urging her to scream, to fight, to flee. But the children stood, mesmerized, their faces lifted toward the figure, as if compelled by an unseen hand. Riley. Max. Lisa strained to reach them, her voice a desperate thread slicing through the tension. The familiar warmth of their touch felt like a faded dream. But the children didn't respond. The twisted figure beckoned with a crooked finger, captivating them in its baleful glow. Lisa's heart thudded hard against her ribs, each beat a reminder of the fragility of the moment. The laughter twisted into a bitter melody, wrapping around her like vines, squeezing the breath from her lungs. No, no, she gasped, inching forward, wishing she had the strength of 10 mothers. Come back. Max blinked slowly, as if waking from a trance. Mom? He whispered, confusion mingling with fear. Lisa's heart soared at his recognition, but the figure's laughter grew louder, vibrating through the very air like a storm gathering strength. Join us, it sang, the words swirling in the night like mist. The shadows writhed, hungry to engulf them, to swallow them in a darkness deeper than oblivion. No! Lisa shouted. She lunged toward her children, feeling the pull of despair tighten around her heart. Run! A sudden gust swept through the clearing, and the moment shattered. The figure faltered, and an intense wave of energy rippled outward, sending Riley stumbling back, eyes wide, as she broke free from the thrall. She darted toward her mother, gripping Lisa's arm with panic-fueled strength. Mom! What is that thing? Riley cried, her voice trembling. I don't know. But we can't stay here. Lisa yelled, urgency propelling her. Max, grounded momentarily by fear, caught on to their escape. What about the light? He asked, glancing back at the radiance that still flickered in taunting waves. No. Lisa barked, fear lacing her voice. It's a trap. They turned to run, but the shadows roared to life, billowing forth with desperate intensity. Lisa felt the phantom fingers grasp at her once more, slithering along her skin, brushing her back, urging her to surrender. Despair clawed at her throat as she realized the forest was alive, an entity bent on ensnaring them. Suddenly, an otherworldly screech erupted from somewhere deep within the thick canopy above, a sound that shattered the very fabric of her resolve. Something massive flapped through the trees, displacing leaves, branches snapping under the weight of its presence. Run! Now! Lisa screamed again, rallying her fractured family. They bolted forward, abandoning the path Lisa had thought she knew. Everything felt wrong, the familiar woods now a pulsating mass of slithering darkness. The children ran beside her, their breaths coming in sharp gasps, fear electrifying the night air around them. Every rustle hinted at the chase behind them. A menacing figure lurked in the trees, stalking their every move, waiting. They could feel the weight of its gaze, pressing heavily against their backs as the shadows closed in. "Mom! I can't keep running!" Max cried out, his legs trembling, desperation in his voice. "Yes, you can. Just a bit further," she urged, adrenaline coursing through her, the sound of their heartbeat matching the frantic rhythm of their escape. But Lisa knew they were running out of time. The laughter echoed again, cutting through the night, a cruel reminder that they were far from safe. Up ahead, a flicker of hope glimmered between the trees, an opening, a field of moonlight that slashed through the darkness like a beacon. The tendrils of shadow recoiled from the light, giving her a desperate burst of energy. "There! Go!" As they sprinted toward the light, the shadows howled, their frustration palpable in the air. Lisa dared a glance back. What she saw chilled her blood. The figure was no longer just watching, it was now chasing them, a cacophony of unnatural shrieks reverberating through the woods. Every instinct in her screamed to run faster, to reach the light. With limbs burning and breaths ragged, the family lunged forward, pushing through the wild undergrowth toward the clearing. Just as they crossed the threshold into the moonlight, she looked back for one last glance, and that was when the true horror took shape. The figure was no longer alone. Forms emerged from the shadows behind it, countless limbs stretching toward them like the hungry mouths of creatures long forgotten. Their eyes glowed, a myriad of colors, a bizarre gallery of nightmarish life. "Run!" Lisa screamed one final time as they plunged into the light, its warmth wrapping around them like a protective shroud. But what lay beyond the light? And could they truly escape the forest, or were they simply digging deeper into an abyss they could never hope to understand? The laughter mingled with distant cries, leaving them with a chilling question that resonated in the growing darkness. What awaited them in safety, or was there even such a place? The moon hung high, casting a silvery glow over the clearing where Lisa, Max, and Riley paused, their lungs burning with the exertion of their escape. All around them, the forest felt alive, the shadows undulating, writhing, as if they were sentient. But here, in the moonlight, they finally felt a fleeting sense of safety, at least for the moment. "Mom," Max gasped, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Is it over?" "I don't know," Lisa replied. Panic still clamped down on her heart, squeezing tighter than before, but for the first time, a flicker of hope dared to rise within her. "We should get to the road where there are other people. We'll be safe there." "But what was that thing?" Riley asked, trembling as she crouched close to her mother, seeking comfort. "It's okay, sweetie," Lisa said, swallowing hard to suppress her own wavering courage. "We'll figure it out. Together." As they turned to leave the clearing, the gentle sounds of the night began to turn unnaturally quiet. Every rustle in the underbrush set their nerves on fire, and Lisa could almost feel the weight of the darkness pressing in around them. Then, from behind them, a low growl erupted, a familiar sound that sent her heart into a frenzied race. "Run!" she shouted, her voice breaking as she grasped her children's hands, pulling them after her through the forest, the light urging them on. They dashed forward, not daring to look back, as the growl transformed into a cacophony of screams that echoed through the night. Lisa's breath came in sharp gasps, every step heavier than the last. She could feel cold tendrils of dread snake their way back into her mind, whispering fears of what lurked just out of sight. "Mom! I can't keep up!" Max cried, stumbling. "Just a bit further," she urged, willing her body to push through the pain. The road had to be close, and then, just as the edge of the forest began to emerge before them, the ground shook violently. Roots erupted from the earth, snaking around their feet, gripping, holding them fast. The children cried out, and Lisa felt terror surge like a tide, threatening to pull them under. "No!" she shouted, using all her strength to yank them free, but the darkness clawed against her, desperate to reclaim its prey. Just when despair threatened to consume her, she spotted it, moonlight streaming through the trees, a path that gleamed like salvation. "Follow me," With every ounce of will, she sprinted toward that sliver of brightness. They blasted through the last layer of darkness, tumbling onto the cold asphalt of the road. Panting heavily, they collapsed on the shoulder of the street, the comforting glow of streetlights bathing them in warmth. Lisa looked around frantically, seeking signs of life, any semblance of safety, but the road was deserted. Max trembled, clutching Riley tightly. What if it comes back? The others will come soon, Lisa reassured, though her voice shook. We just need to wait. But from the tree line behind them, laughter echoed, that same distorted laughter that sent shivers racing down her spine. It felt like a confirmation, a promise that their struggle was far from over. Suddenly, headlights flashed into view, headlights from a car approaching from down the road. Relief surged through Lisa as she waved her arms desperately, calling out. Help! We need help! The car slowed, and as it came closer, she could see the concerned faces of their neighbors, friends she'd known for years. Lisa! Kids! Mrs. Anderson shouted, jumping from the driver's seat. What happened? Get us out of here! Riley cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. We were chased. There were creatures. Lisa's words piled on top of each other, bursting forth in a flood of panic. Get in! Quickly! Mr. Anderson ordered, ushering them to the car. As they climbed into the back seat, Max and Riley clutched each other tightly, Lisa sinking in her seat with a sense of utter exhaustion. The car sped off, wheels burning against the asphalt, the familiarity of the street easing the tension slowly curling in her gut. But Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching, that their escape from the dark was only temporary. She glanced nervously back into the trees, unable to shake the image of the creature's distorted grin from her mind. As they drove through the neighborhood, the ordinary sights stirred familiar memories. Kids on bikes, neighbors chatting, laughter spilling into the evening air. It was a stark contrast to the horror they had just endured. But how could something so sinister hide within something so normal? Lisa's mind raced with questions, the surreal juxtaposition between the two worlds making her feel dizzy. What if the darkness was still lurking, just beyond the cheerful facades? By the time they reached home, the weight of exhaustion began to sink into her bones. Home sweet home, she thought, her heart swelling at the thought of safety, even though her mind hardly believed it. Are we safe now, Mom? Riley whispered, looking up at her with wide, shimmering eyes. I promise you, we are, Lisa replied, willing herself to believe it as they exited the car. But as she turned to the tree line one last time, she caught a flicker of movement, a shadow passing through the thicket. Her breath hitched. They had escaped, but the night felt unfinished, ominous, and alive. And as the front door swung open to welcoming warmth, Lisa gathered her children close, determination hardening her resolve. They had to be brave. They had to keep watch because something was waiting. And this time, they would be ready, just when they thought they couldn't fight anymore. Life would demand that they rise once again, ready to confront whatever darkness dared approach. Before they closed the door, she vowed to herself, not just for her children, but for every face that smiled in the light, the nightmares that would never take them without a fight, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.